Well, welcome everybody. All right. Welcome to Owensboro Health Twin Lakes Medical Center. We are honored that all of you could join us today to celebrate the history of the original hospital in Grayson County, the Grayson County War Memorial Hospital, and the unveiling of the time capsule that was placed in the monument in 1949 at the construction of the hospital. And now we'd like to welcome the Grayson County American Legion Honor Guard for the bringing in of the time capsule and the
Everyone, please stand if you would.
I'd now like to introduce Mark Buckles, the Master of Ceremonies for our event today. Mark has a special connection to the Grayson County War Memorial Hospital. His grandfather, Dr. James Reno Buckles, started at the hospital in 1967, and so did his aunt, Mary Lynn Buckles.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you so much. What an honor it is to be here today for an event nearly 75 years in the making. For those of you who are in the back of the room, you're just going to have to come closer. There won't be any traffic through there now, but this is about the most sound we're going to be able to throw back there to you. Much like many of you, when my friend Judge Henderson announced that this capsule had been located, I was immediately intrigued about the contents, of course, but I also was intrigued about it signaling a chapter change in our community and growing from out of one facility, growing for future generations. And so we would be foolish not to celebrate today and commemorate what it is that our early leaders saw for us to find on this day or whatever day that we reach this milestone. For nearly the first decade of my life, Grayson County War Memorial was the hospital. Then after this beautiful campus where we are today, we christened here, Grayson County War Memorial sort of got repurposed for other things. It was where I first attended 4-H meetings. It's where some of my friends began their careers in emergency medical services, from cooperative extension services to employment services to the Grayson County Alliance. It has housed many things and served many purposes over the last few years. But to get to today, you have to start at the beginning. And there's no better person that I know to speak about the origins of our modern local healthcare system than Judge Kenneth Goff. Steve Meredith recently got to sit with Judge Goff and learn about some of the earliest days of Grayson County War Memorial and the journey that brings us to today. We'll share this with you.
I'm here today with Judge Goff, who has a great history with the hospital almost from the very beginning. I assume the very beginning. And he was instrumental not just establishing the hospital, but giving the structure that made it uniquely successful for Kentucky. At the time, a lot of rural hospitals were run by the fiscal courts. And Judge Goff, and I'd asked him to explain how he came to that decision, but in his infinite wisdom, he decided we need to set this up as a private, not-for-profit corporation that took county government and county politics out of the operation of the hospital. And again, I think that was monumental in making the hospital as successful as it was in the future. And Judge, if you would, I'd appreciate if you explained to me how you came up with the decision to establish the hospital foundation.
The Grayson County Hospital was dedicated in 1951. It was her first Hill-Burton hospital in the state of Kentucky. Hill-Burton was a congressional act that funded rural hospitals. Roy Carter was county judge at the time in 1951 when it was dedicated. Local business people here, I suppose the establishment around Litchfield promoted it. But when they built it, Grayson County had a budget of $40,000 a year for its county budget. They didn't have any money. They got a hospital built, didn't have any money to run it on. And the hospital contracted with a doctor from Lexington, Kentucky, a surgeon, and leased it to that surgeon for 5 years. The surgeon had an airplane. The surgeon originated in Wisconsin. The man brought surgeons in here, 2 prior to Dr. Thomas. Dr. Thomas was the last one he brought. Then if he'd fly in here from Lexington and do the surgery too. So you'll notice when I set up the corporation, you had voting members of $25. That's how we got the money to pay him $5,000 for that building. That's how we got it. I set it up so that each district had a member, each magisterial district had a member, and the 3 members at large. Judge Bratcher, Bank of Clarkson, was a member of it. Frank Adams, produce man here, was a member of it. Henry Macbeth had the hardware store, was a member of it. R.E. Hughes was a member of it. George Haycraft, who owned the 10-cent store, was a member. We set it up in 56. In 1958, sent people to nursing school so we'd have nurses. And Margaret Green was a nurse at the hospital, and she was killed on the way to Caneyville to talk to senior class about applying for those nursing scholarships. And they called it the Margaret Green Scholarships. We made arrangements to send people to nursing school, and we never had a nursing shortage, all during the 60s and 70s, when other people was having all kind of shortages. Lena Ray Davison, daughter of David Davison, received the first nursing scholarship in September 1959. In around 75, there's a movement to build a new hospital. Before Emory was judge, and they put the matter on the ballot, and the people turned it down. They wouldn't have a bond issue. Sam Alexander at that time was chairman of the board of Hospital Foundation, and I was going home from my office and met him there coming out of the bank. And he says, how can we get a new hospital? And I said, set up a hospital district, a taxing district. And that's what was done. And we built a new hospital.
You know, you're talking about that, the hospital district judge.
Do what?
You're talking about the hospital district, the taxing district?
Yeah.
My recollection of that was that the first time they tried to do the bond issue was in 1970, because I was a senior in high school, and Dr. Thomas's son, David, was a year behind me, and I remember him talking about it in the class. And the first time that that was on the ballot, it failed, did it not?
Yeah, but instead of hospital district, and you didn't put that on the ballot.
Well, and the second time, we were able to get the taxing district, and that did give us the funding
The
for the
taxing
hospital.
district building. Taxing district didn't have to go on, didn't have to be voted on. And that's how come you had to have the hospital.
Wasn't aware of that. That's a
And
great
That's
piece of history
and
right
we
there.
still pay the tax every year.
You know, when it was built, and correct me if I'm wrong, Judge, but I believe the original footprint of the hospital, the Grayson County War Memorial Hospital, was right at 8,000 square feet, 20 beds, 20 hospital beds. As Judge mentioned, in 1958, they decided they needed more space, so they added, I think, another 6,000 square feet.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you about that. I got a picture somewhere. It's in the paper. We had a bond issue then, 2%. We sold, I forgot, $200,000 worth of bonds, 2%, 1958, and we built that addition to the hospital. We took over in 56 and built that addition to the hospital in 58.
And that added additional 6,000 square feet and 20 beds. So when
How many square feet? I'd forgotten.
the addition was 6,000 square feet,
Yeah.
to give a total of 14,000 square feet. When we moved to what we call the new hospital in 1979, that building was 56,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So it was 4 times the size of the old Grayson County War Memorial Hospital.
You know, this is something interesting too. We built that hospital, and you know what it cost a day to stay in that hospital? $12. A Holiday Inn cost $13. Holiday. We had a fellow here in Litchfield named McKibbe. Well, that's way before your time. McKibbe was sort of a self-anointed artist. I don't know how he made a living. But about one time a year, he'd go down to the hospital and check himself in and stay in the bed for a week. $12 a night.
And that wasn't unusual. Before there was a nursing home in Grayson County, a lot of people would bring their elderly relatives to stay at the hospital so they could go on holiday vacation. And obviously that practice doesn't happen anymore, but back in the day that wasn't unusual. And Judge Goff's been instrumental in building the Grayson County War Memorial Hospital, but he's also instrumental in starting Grayson Manor Nursing Facility, which he's made reference to. And I did work for the judge as the administrator of that nursing home when I came back from Western Kentucky University in 1975 and worked there for 2 years before Russ Hackley approached me about being the first chief financial officer for the hospital. So that's how I came to work for the hospital. But Judge Goff's been involved in so many things in Grayson County, and so much that we can be proud of is because of his vision for our community, and we're eternally grateful to him. And
You sort of beat me to the punch just a little bit, because I did want to footnote that. It's impossible to articulate the full measure of the contributions that he has made in so many different pathways in our community. Please help me in thanking Judge Kenneth Goff. Every time I get an opportunity, I share with Judge Goff. He gave me an opportunity for employment when I was in high school. later gave me an opportunity to stay at home and operate a business. And it's those pathways that led us to my honor of being able to be with you today. And earlier this week, I got a signed copy of Judge Goff's book, and I will cherish it forever. Thank you, Judge, so much. It's a small fraternity of people that can speak to what it was like to work daily at the Old War Memorial Hospital and then move here to Wallace Avenue and spend an entire career continuing to lay the building blocks of our health care. It's an honor to welcome former CFO, CEO, and current state senator, Mr. Steve Meredith.
Thanks, sir.
Welcome. Turning down just a little, mic two. Thank you. All right, get you settled. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Again, I haven't seen you in about 15 minutes since I
Sure.
was back there.
You haven't changed a bit.
What aged just slightly? Tell me about the privilege of spending time with Judge Goff.
Oh, goodness. We go back so far. Straight out of college, I went to work as the administrator of Grayson Nursing Home, and that was really our first interaction. And I was just telling Mark just a few minutes ago that anything that's been accomplished in Grayson County over the last 60, 70 years, Judge Goff had his hand in, and certainly this hospital. And when we interviewed the other day, he taught me some things I didn't know about the Grayson County War Memorial Hospital. So really was honored to spend time with him and really appreciate the job that he has done for Grayson County.
Do you have some feeling for what healthcare was like in Grayson County, 1949, 1951, depending upon how you look at it, Cornerstone opening?
Well, I wasn't born until 1953, but,
right, but you're a historian, and I know you've done some research, so what did you know about it?
I have, and one I remind people of, it was a big event in the late 40s, was the birth of the Lash League quads. And those babies, 4 babies, were born at home. And at that time, you transferred people to Louisville if you needed extended high-level health care. And that's what Grayson County was. But on a more personal nature, my father, he was born in 1921, had rheumatoid fever when he was a small child. And he used to tell me about how his parents bundled him up in blankets and put him back in a horse-drawn wagon and took him to the doctor to be treated. So hospitals were a foreign concept to most rural communities, and people just didn't have health care.
Right. When the facility, we've seen what is kind of what we would deem a fairly modest building in old black and white photos, but it must have had an immediate impact in the community.
Almost certainly have. And if you see the pictures here today of people who were there on July 1st, 1951, when the facility opened, they welcomed it. And then the population of Grayson County was only about 15,000, 16,000. And I'm sure it was a monumental day, maybe the greatest day in the history of Grayson County at that point in time.
I want to focus kind of primarily on the period from 1949 to 1979, and you coming in on the tail end of that. But if we were going to put some faces on the Mount Rushmore of Grayson County War Memorial, who are some of the names that we picture on Mount Rushmore?
I think for what we still refer to as the old hospital, the old Grayson County War Memorial Hospital, certainly what I consider their founding fathers, which would include Judge Goff, but folks like Tom Ellis, Judge Carter. There were so many what we consider successful businessmen at that time that had a vision for this community that they certainly should be there. But that's kind of like phase one. But the next phase, I would say, is late 60s, early 70s. And I see Dr. Joe Lee here, and goodness, with Dr. Duval coming back in 1970 and Dr. Lee coming back, I think it was 76, 77, that really started, I think, improving the quality of our medical staff, lifting it to a new level, and allowed us to recruit additional physicians over the next few years. And it's based on the quality of those two individuals and what they brought to Grayson County. Particularly Dr. Lee here. I've heard people say at Norton's Hospital, Children's Hospital, is the Children's Hospital in Kentucky. And that residents would get phone calls all the time from pediatricians and family physicians throughout the state. Mm-hmm. And to the point it was bothersome. But as part of their orientation, their chiefs would say, but if you hear from Joe Lee, you take his phone call. That's the quality physician he has, and I think that really elevated our medical staff and gave us the basis for building the facility that we have today.
Speaking of this facility, if you look around the room, you'll see various posters and various artifacts, and you're going to see names like Osmet and Tucker and Thomas and Bland and Embry and O'Neill. You'll see Leah Vanderboom, the first certified registered nurse anesthetist in Kentucky, here in 1955. Flash forward just a little bit, and
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Ralph Thomas, since you mentioned that.
Yeah.
He was an exceptional surgeon. I started with the hospital in December 1977, and one of the first things that Russell Hackley, the former administrator, my mentor and great friend, had me do, I thought was kind of strange, was go over the surgical logs to see how many cases of surgery Dr. Thomas had done. And it was incredible. And back in those days, a general surgeon, when you did surgery, it was from the top of your head to the bottom of your toes. Today, it's a much more confined area. But I don't think people understood, appreciated what a world-class surgeon he was. Matter of fact, he was written up, I think it was in New Yorker magazine, because he was a MASH surgeon back in Korea. We all know the television series MASH. That was Dr. Thomas. And he brought a set of surgical skills that truly were second to none. He could have gone anywhere in the world and made a living, and really would have been renowned for what he did.
So and I want to revisit some of those iconic names in just a moment, but I kind of want to follow the chronology to kind of bring us to current day in a moment. You know, communities in decline don't build state-of-the-art healthcare facilities like the one that was being dreamed of and then was executed and then constructed and then moved into in this facility where we are today. Talk about where the community was during the planning and bringing us to Wallace Avenue and how crucial that was.
Well, at that time, it wasn't unusual. Grayson County War Memorial Hospital was licensed for 40 beds, but it operates a much bigger facility, and folks such as the Montgomerys here know that it wasn't unusual to have patients in the hallway. That's where you took care of them. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you a brief story about Russ Hackley. When Russ was a kid, he a little bit impatient, and he was mowing the yard one day. He didn't want to, but was mowing the yard, and there was a bolt that was rattling on the carriage of the lawnmower. And he thought he would just tighten that thing up without turning the mower off. And he said he stuck his hand under there and came back and said, something's wrong, and had a couple of fingers almost amputated, just held on by a piece of skin. And he said, I literally picked him up, put him back on, and went in the house and said, I've got a problem. Well, Dr. Thomas was a surgeon. And he said if he had been an older individual, it would have been amputation. But because he was so young, he would try. And bear in mind, this is long before microscopic surgery.
Sure.
And Dr. Thomas successfully reattached those two fingers. But Russell said that what bothered him the most is embarrassment, because there wasn't a bed for him. He had to be set up in the hallway with kind of privacy curtains around him. But hand real bandaged up, and naturally everybody would come by and say, what happened to you? I was too embarrassed to tell people, but that was the state of it. First, we were too short of space. Only one, what we call the ER room, only one x-ray table, and a lab that would probably fit on this stage right here. But the condition of the building, you know, when you use the building 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, it deteriorates. And literally the last year we were there, we had to prop up the ceiling to keep it from collapsing. So there was those two dynamics going on. But it goes back to the original construction of the Grayson County War Memorial Hospital. Somebody had a vision. So someone else had a vision. Mm-hmm. And certainly, again, I mentioned Dr. Lee and Dr. Duval. They had come back. They had different plans for Grayson County and wanted to provide the quality services that could only be accomplished if we could build a state-of-the-art facility that would recruit physicians here. I think when I started the hospital, we had 7 doctors on our active medical staff. When I retired in 2013, we had 34. Wow. That's how much it's grown. And truly, I think the greatest compliment that I received for this hospital, you know, I was also a regional administrator for the management company, Alliant Management Company, and we were a neighboring community, and they were looking for a management contract. And they said, how did you all accomplish what you accomplished? I said, well, the first thing you have to do is have a vision. I said, what's your vision for this hospital? They said, we want to be Twin Lakes Regional Medical Center. And again, that's the greatest compliment that I think you could give this facility. But I think what's missed from that is you can build the greatest facilities in the world, but if you don't have employees who are committed and compassionate for what they're doing, it means absolutely nothing. And what amazed me when I came to work for the hospital, my first department managers meeting, at that time we had about 25, and the meeting was held in the basement in what we call the boardroom, but it was rather small as well. And Russell Hackley asked me, 1 month on the job, what's your impression of Grayson County War Memorial Hospital? Now, I grew up in Grayson County, so I will say that my original opinion wasn't the most favorable in the world. As a matter of fact, I think people viewed it very erroneously as a Band-Aid station, and that's so tragic. But I meant with all sincerity, he said, what's your impression? I said, I really don't understand the people that work here. I think they work with blinders on. Because look, the place that's falling down around us is too small. We don't have the right equipment, but you wouldn't know it from looking at these people. You would think, just watching their behavior, watching their attitude, that they all work at a major medical facility. And that spirit is what we brought from the Grayson County War Memorial Hospital to what we know now is Twin Lakes Regional Medical Center. And I can't thank the employees of this hospital enough for the commitment that you've made to quality patient care for this community. I think in a lot of rural communities we have a tendency to have a little bit of an inferiority complex, and we shouldn't. These folks have been second to none. And it's always amazed me when something new would come down the pike from the federal government or insurance companies that we'd have to do something. Our people would rush around trying to figure out how are we going to deal with this, and we'd put together just fantastic programs to deal with it. And then when we're meeting with larger hospitals, we'd ask them, are we doing this right? And they said, what are you talking about? We're going to do what you're all doing. So we were always ahead of that curve. But again, it speaks to the quality of people that worked here and the commitment. You know, our byline at the time was medical excellence, compassionate care. But I emphasize that compassionate care because it truly is overwhelming. I don't know how anybody could expect to go to a hospital and find better quality care from your friends, your neighbors, and your loved ones. And that spirit has never left here.
If you tour this campus, you're going to see names that are clearly pillars of healthcare in the community. We've already talked about Thomas, Cave, Bland. But a short stroll from here, we'll find ourselves in an area named for a man who did not practice the medical arts, but made sure people could. Where would we be without Walter T. Kelly?
Oh goodness, you know, Mr. Kelly, and most people know his story. He was located in Paducah in the early 50s when they built the nuclear fusion plant there. And he said he came in one day, all of his employees had left because government jobs pay a lot of money. So he loads up his pickup truck and travels old Highway 62 because we don't have Western Kentucky Parkway back in those days. And he comes to the curve up here in 62. He said, this is where I'm going to put my factory. And it really was unique in its making and its product. And he developed a friendship with Dr. Ralph Thomas. And I think Dr. Thomas is instrumental as anybody of encouraging Mr. Kelly to be a benefactor of this hospital. And I think from the late, early 60s until the late 70s, he donated about $400,000 to the hospital, which we held in reserve in anticipation of building a new hospital. But Mr. Kelly was insistent, and I see Ray Montgomery sitting there because she was at the board meeting where we had one element of our board that wanted to use that to buy new equipment, and Russ Hackley's vision was, let's build a medical office building so we can attract physicians here. And Russell wouldn't win in the argument until Mr. Kelly came in. He said, you can do whatever you want to do. I don't love doing a lot of money this hospital, but you can do whatever you want to do. But by the way, if you don't build a medical office building, probably my estate will go to Cozaire Children's Hospital.
Oh, wow.
And it's amazing how, well, Mr. Kelly, we didn't mean we wouldn't be building a medical office building. We just didn't know if we were going to do it right now.
Sure. Yeah.
We'll do it right now.
Well, and his influence is, still paying dividends up at the campus, and, just those seeds that were sown so long ago.
Let me tell you one other funny story about him. As we were building this facility, Russ Hackley took him his tour of it, and they're on the second floor. And Mr. Kelly's looking out over the hillside over there, And he says, you can't see the window from the bed. The doors are placed in a long position. He said, I think it's therapeutic if patients can look out the window and maybe see rabbits and deer and things like that. And the rest said, well, Mr. Kelly, I appreciate that, but we've already got the doors in place. And I said, how much will it cost to change that? So we got an estimate for the architect. He said, I'll write you a check.
Wow. That's commitment, indeed. One of the privileges of hosting an event like this is tying together the past, the present, and the future of the healthcare in our community. Please help me in welcoming the CEO of Owensboro Health, Mr. Mark Marsh. Good afternoon. Good to see you. Good to see you. Let's make sure that's on. And
See if that is working back there in the back.
yeah, I think it's working well. Hey, I'd imagine as you've guided Owensboro Health to presence here in Litchfield and Grayson County, you probably did not have a day like today in this setting in mind, like when you were getting to this point. Yeah.
Not at all. Not at all. It's exciting, and I think the one thing I heard from Steve, certainly it's not just the vision, but I'd be remiss without saying it's the incredible team members and the incredible medical staff, really, who's made this such a special day.
Assuming that taking over and operating a facility on ideal conditions is not easy, doing it during a pandemic is probably not how it was drawn up. What are your early observations? I know you talked about the people and how important they are, but kind of what are your early observations about Litchfield, Grayson County, and this beautiful campus?
Absolutely, and as Steve was saying, it's not the bricks and mortar, it's the people, and unbelievable setting right here. And certainly I want to say what Steve, the vision, and all the leaders, even predating Steve, it was amazing to see what they've achieved here. And so, to your point, none of us would ever predicted what the last 3 years have meant on healthcare, on every industry for that matter. But I think it's really it's the human element. What we can't forget about healthcare is that human connectivity we have with our patients, with our community, and really it's the partnerships. And so, what's exciting about Owensboro Health is really now approaching 2 years. January will be 2 years in the partnership. Is really what we're going to be able to achieve together. And I truly want to make that, emphasize that it's truly the partnership and how do we advance, build upon the great things already happening here in Litchfield.
I know in your office you spend a lot of time, I'll call it blue sky thinking, daydreaming about what the future looks like. I know you're obviously focused on the coming weeks and months, but when you gaze off into the next decade or so, Mark, what do you see in the way of healthcare? What big exciting changes can you imagine?
You know, what's interesting, I guess these 3 years have really opened our eyes of things we probably never imagined we could do. As you think about what we had, many of you probably saw where we had to use telemedicine. So artificial intelligence, all these advancements we're making in healthcare. And I know Steve and I go back just from the days, and he and I had the chance to share when in my former life in Bowling Green, I used to come over when Steve was the CEO here. But you think about imaging, technology, but where we're going today, the future, we're going to be doing a lot more advancements at home, where now you can connect and talk with your physicians, your providers at home. But I think the technology, and I always laugh, I compare it to the days of the Jetsons, if we remember the Jetsons. I think we're in that Jetson stage kind of in healthcare. And so I think the next 10 years really are going to be really telling for healthcare. Because we know, you know what, there's true reality, there's just shortage in a lot of the resources. We're working on building more nurses. We know nationally that it's a shortage in nurses, and we have great nurses here. We have a shortage of many of our physicians. So that's one of our emphases here is bringing healthcare local and bringing more advancements in healthcare. But I'm excited about what we're going to achieve together really in these next 10 years.
Okay, so that's the intermediate future of healthcare. If you have to put in a time capsule today, we're going to empty that one, and we're going to fill it full of things to be opened in 2100. What are you going to put in there?
So kind of two things I'm thinking through, because those technology advancements, I think about the days of what we're using still, and the physicians are using stethoscopes and some of these things. So I think about what we could fill in there, but I think things are going to look a lot different in terms of the technology. The second thing I'd like to do is probably put a picture of Steve Meredith in there. So we can look back and say, we knew Steve when he was a state senator. We didn't know him that he was going to become the governor and possibly the president one day. So we know what he puts his sights on, he achieves. And so we look forward to that one day of what he's going to achieve and what we can do together. But no, we're excited about those days.
This is not a paid political announcement.
So from what you've seen here today, and I know you just got here a few minutes ago, but I know you've had an opportunity to see some of the artifacts and know what your team has been planning for today. When you look back at Grayson County War Memorial, 1950s, 1960s, what do you see from that time that you think is important to integrate into our healthcare today?
Yeah. I heard Steve reference, and what I've looked back is some of the partnerships he had with some of the medical providers and Dr. Thomas and the others. And so I think it's really keeping that human element here. We know we're going to bring advancements in terms of technology, physicians, and the things we want to do to expand throughout all Grayson County and all throughout. But I want to make sure that we keep that human element. And you'll hear Ashley talk about that. It's how we connect, and it's the human experience, right, with not only our patients, but with our team members. And I think if we keep that, we got to keep that at the forefront and making sure that we don't ever lose sight of that. Because, technology will take us along. We've learned that last 3 years. Mm-hmm. But I hope we learn as we listen to our patients, we listen to our community, and we truly are a collaborator as we work together in a partnership.
Steve, something from the 50s or 60s that you think maybe we've drifted away from or that we really need to focus on in the future?
I do, and I always remember Margaret Mead, the anthropologist's quote about never doubt what a small group of dedicated commitment citizens can change the world. It's the only thing it ever has. And you go back to the genesis of Grayson County War Memorial Hospital, how did it start? Just a handful of people who had a vision that were committed to it. And rural communities in Kentucky are struggling greatly right now. I think we're going to have some great opportunities in the future if we will embrace those opportunities. But if we don't, we will be left behind. So what's so most important is to have that vision for the future. And I'll say this to all the folks here, what do you want this community to be? We have a great opportunity with what's happening in Elizabethtown and Bowling Green. I think from Elizabethtown to Bowling Green to Owensboro is going to be the next golden triangle in Kentucky if we take advantage of it. And a lot of folks, particularly rural communities, say, we don't want to change. I'm sorry. Communities are living organisms. You either grow or you die. It's just that simple. And if you don't believe that, take a road trip sometime down Highway 62 and see what the interstate has done to small communities that didn't adapt in just. So just know that you can accomplish anything if you've got then a small group of dedicated, committed people willing to do it. And I know this community has it.
Thanks
That's
so
never
much.
going to change.
If you're viewing around the world, and it's so wonderful that we can touch so many people today spread over such a great geographic area, you might not fully appreciate how full this corridor is of people who are anxiously awaiting to find out what our forefathers planted for us in August of 49. And so with that in mind, I want to hand things back over to Ashley Harrington. She is the CEO of Owensboro Health Twin Lakes. You heard from her earlier, and she is going to commence with the proceedings to open the time capsule.
All right, it's been such an honor to hear from our distinguished guests, Judge Goff, Senator Meredith, Mr. Marsh. But I know what all of you are here for, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Judge Executive Kevin Henderson for the official opening of the time capsule.
Thank you, Ashley. Honestly, I'll tell you folks, I sort of felt like the bad guy when all this went down at first, because we was tearing the old War Memorial Hospital down. We had talked about it with the other magistrates that we have, and there's been vision has been mentioned many times by everybody has spoke, and we actually had a vision also, and when I first came into office in 2017, I looked at some numbers, and of course I'm sort of a business type leader, and we was paying between $3,000 and $4,000 a month utilities for that facility. So that's why we had decided to close the facility, And we had some people come in and look at it, and it was just beyond repair. We didn't have any other options, quite honestly. If we tore it down, we was going to, if we tried to remodel it, it was going to cost more than we could tear it down and actually build back again. So it was unfortunate that it happened. I was born in that hospital. My grandparents passed away in that hospital. There's so much history in that hospital. As I look through the corridor here, give me a show of hands. How many people worked in that facility? That's sort of unbelievable. I mean, and also, I see y'all back there too. I want everybody to give them a hand. Thank you all for being here. And you know, you hope with change, prosperity comes, and we hope that we continue to prosper, and hopefully with the leadership that we have at the state level. Senator, we hope you, that means more road funds, by the way. Thanks. So I want to thank Judge Goff. He's been a mentor of mine. He is a walking encyclopedia, and he tells me history upon history of Grayson County. People don't know how much he has helped me in my position as judge, things that I should do, things I shouldn't do. Sometimes I don't always listen to him. I probably should, but he is a great friend. He's been a family friend of my family for years, way before I was born, and I want to thank him for this. So I also wanted to take this opportunity. I don't mean to keep talking, Mark. I apologize, but a lot of people, as we've been sitting here today, the last loads of the War Memorial Hospital was actually hauled off. So it's a bare lot now. Everything is gone. We did save a lot of the material that was on the site for future use. So I wanted to go ahead and let you know, I've talked to the magistrates. We've all come to a conclusion that this is what we're going to do. As you all know, we have worked tirelessly on the courthouse to get it back in shape, back looking good, back functional for the public. Spent a lot of money up there, but that's a piece of history that we cannot let go. That is sort of the icon of Grayson County, of our community. So what we're going to be doing at the facility is building a new county court clerk's office and PVA office. Will be standing where the War Memorial Hospital was actually located. We want to make it easier for our citizens to get their vehicle registration. We're also going to have a drive-in window at that location for our elderly folks so they don't have to come in. Of course, the PVA and the county clerk's office works hand in hand for the assessments of the taxes on the registration for the vehicles and stuff, so we need to have them in the same facility. The county attorney will stay on the second floor of the old courthouse, and we'll also put another government facility on the third floor. So I wanted to pass that along. That's what's going to be happening. Hopefully, we'll be breaking ground in March of 2023. So just a few months away, we'll be breaking ground and hopefully have that building open by the end of 2023. So I know there's a lot of changes coming. There's still going to be a lot of changes coming because we've got industry moving in all over the place, different counties and stuff. Some things are going to go on here. Of course, you can't really release anything until it's actually etched in stone. So there's big changes coming, and hopefully for the better. And what a great facility we have here. I mean, you all have talked about, you all worked in the old hospital. I actually was there too back in the 80s when I worked for the Grayson County EMS. And a lot of history there, I understand, and we want to try to preserve as much as we can. So in the new building, we're going to implement a wall out of the bricks of the old hospital, the War Memorial Hospital, along with if you got the picture up, the glass tile at the front door. We actually saved all those. So I heard a lot of people say that they really liked those, and it was, when you pulled up, you knew you was at the hospital. So we're going to implement those in the lobby of the new building. So that's what we plan on doing. So, but I want to thank you all for showing up today, coming in today. A lot of people might not think this is interesting, but I think history is probably the most interesting to me that it could possibly be. I mean, I just love it. So that's why I like talking to Judge Goff. And I mean, Senator Meredith, you're getting about like that. I mean, honestly. So I appreciate you too.
It's a compliment, thank you.
So without further ado, I want to thank my staff. Scotty Cantway is with me today. Whenever we started tearing this down, we had a sneaking suspicion that because somebody had told me, they said they usually put time capsules on like the southwest, southeast corner of these older buildings that have been built. So one day I called Scotty and I said, Scotty, I've got a sneaking suspicion that something might be in that monument there. And so they went over, was really careful with it, chiseled it out. Sure enough, he called me about 35 minutes later and he said, you ain't gonna believe this. And I said, what? And he said, there's a time capsule in there. And he said, well, it's either somebody's time capsule or somebody left their lunchbox in the wall, one of the two. So I said, no, I think it's what it is.
Let's
So,
open it. We
yeah.
waited long enough. Let's
yeah.
open it.
So we're going to go ahead and open it and see what's in it. Scotty, if you don't care, come up and get this thing started. This is a solid copper box, and it's been welded, so that's... It's not a lunchbox, so we're good. Yeah. All right. Mark, do you want to look over these? Or?
Let's let Steve do it. I think Steve or...
It's got some papers in it, guys, and it's got an old newspaper. What's it dated, Steve? I can't see. That ain't got my glasses on.
August 18th, 1949.
August 18th, 1949, the Litchfield Gazette.
And the article in the very center of the page is Cornerstone Laying Ceremonies Held Saturday at War Memorial Hospital.
So it's a story about the time capsule being entombed in the cornerstone.
But this is good news. It also says that Orrin Lawler will succeed Woosley as superintendent of county schools. So
Newsflash.
People who know Orrin P. Lawler.
Newsflash.
Wonderful. A lot of typewritten pages here. I don't think Patty Bratcher did them. It says this material compiled by Irma C. McClure and Grace Watkins. So I guess they were the ones that typed this. First page, the boys who lost their lives in World War II. Because obviously this was World War II vets.
Steve, you think it'd be fitting to go ahead and read those names while we was, how many pages is there?
Let's see how many pages of this we have here.
We will make sure and
Lot of
publish
names,
that
Judge.
list.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
We'll make sure and
Yeah.
publish the list.
And it's also
Yeah, we got 4 pages of those.
taking pictures and putting them on Facebook as well. Next document is the Grayson County War Memorial Hospital Building Committee. I will read these names. Judge Calvin Cash was chairman, Fred Hughes, G.W. Thomason, Albert Thomason, Tilford Haycraft, Thomas Ellis, Gilbert Hatfield, L.M. Harrison, Mike Porter, Estelle Bratcher, and Jarrett Stites. A lot of great names there, individuals. Grayson County War Memorial Hospital Promotion Committee. This is dated April 1947. Boyd Sisk, Thomas Ellis, Jared Stites, Porter Wallace, and Fred Hughes. And the Grayson County Fiscal Court at that time, first district was H.K. Kane, second district was A.M. Ingren, M.Z. Lehman, J.R. Wilkins, third district was A.M. Lambert, fourth district was Claude Fulkerson, fifth district was J.L. Johnson, and district number 6 was Harry McClure. Now this was a cornerstone committee, so we know who to get credit or blame for this. Mrs. Martine Lowry, Mrs. Georgia Sisk, L.M. Harrison, C.O. Carrier, and Alan P. Cubbage. Grayson County officials at this time were R.L. Dunn, Circuit Court Clerk, Calvin Cash, County Judge, R.H. Cannon, County Attorney, Porter Wallace, County Court Clerk, Preston Cannon, Sheriff, U.J. Simpson, Tax Collector, L.F. Pryor was Jailer, C.W. Watkins was Coroner, as was Oscar Downs. And last but not least, County Doctors. Dr. C.L. Bland, Dr. W.L. Osment, Dr. M. Phelps, Dr. J.C. Tucker, Dr. J.G. Hale, Dr. C.L. Sherman. In the Grayson County Health Department staff was Dr. Bruce Underwood was director, Jesse E. Kidd was public health nurse, Martine Lowry, Grace Cash, and Mildred McClure. That's the contents. Great history.
I know that we will, obviously there's a refreshment ceremony to follow and be able to enjoy some of the artifacts that are here. Our live production will be ending momentarily and we'll be able to mill around and visit with one another, but before we go officially, and Ashley, I think you'll probably want to have some closing remarks, but Mark, I know that you all have a gift for Steve that I'll let you, you'll never guess what's in there.
I think I know what it is. There you go.
Yeah.
It's the first brick for that new road that you're going to be putting in.
All right. Yep. Yellow Brick Road.
Steve, thank you for all your many years and the great things you've done here, and just appreciate you as a person, as a leader, and we look forward to doing great things, and you're building upon the great things you've done here.
Well, thank you, but I'm going to acknowledge that I'm not worthy to sit up here. It's these folks, and I see so many faces that were such an instrumental part of Grayson County War Memorial Hospital, and such great stories. I only worked there 2 years, so they gave me a lifetime full of memories. And folks, I can't thank you enough for the tremendous support you've given to our community and to me personally as the CEO of this hospital. So, folks, I accept this, but on your behalf, thank you.
Thank you. And for some final remarks, by the way, thank you so much for allowing me the honor of being here with you today. And final remarks to end at least our production. Ashley Harrington, I'll turn things back over to her.
So we do have 2 other final gifts that we want to present. And as you mentioned, I don't know if we did open it. These are bricks from the old hospital. We have one for you, Mark. Thank you so much for your production today. And then we also have one for Judge Goff. So this finishes up our ceremony today. Thank you all so much for being here. It has been such an honor to hear some of these stories that have been shared and the history of the original hospital. Feel free to...
I didn't mean to interrupt her. A lot of people's probably going to wonder what we're going to do with these documents, and this will be on display here at Owensboro Health in the lobby. So we're going to leave these documents with them. They'll preserve them, and it'll just be a part of history of the hospital. So we felt it fitting to leave it here, and that way when folks come in and they can see the history of the Grayson County War Memorial Hospital. So please feel free, spend some time, fellowship with old friends.
We've got refreshments in the back. We also have a number of historical documents and photographs for you all to enjoy. Thank you so much for being here.